Imagine living in a place where there's no shortage of funds for our public schools, a place where you want to raise your kids and your family, where there is a practical and sustainable solution for our healthcare and social issues. How is this possible, you may ask yourself? Well, after a lot of research and a lot of digging through data and statistics, I have found one small step to achieving these goals. And that small step is the legalization of marijuana for medicinal and recreational use. Now, how does legalization of marijuana help solve these problems? You may ask. Well, let's first of all look at those issues that we have talked about. We have the underfunded public schools, we have crime rates that continue to rise in our cities, and we also have drug problems that continue to rise all the time. First of all, as far as the funding for our public schools, if we take a look at what has happened in Colorado for the first 3 quarters of the year, according to the Colorado Tax Revenue website, they have raised almost $29 million worth of additional revenues from the sales tax, the licensing, and also the fees that are associated with medicinal and recreational marijuana. That's from the cultivation up to the point of sale. Now, this doesn't include the additional revenue from income taxes from those new businesses and from those new employees. And if we just take a look at that first almost $30 million, let's say, for this so far, if we take a conservative figure on there and say if this were to happen in all 50 states, that would be almost $2 billion worth of additional revenue in 1 year. And now I do know that money is not everything, so we don't want to be just trying to make money, but in turn making our streets unsafe for us and our kids. Well, let's take a look at Colorado and see what's happened with their crime rates there since the legalization of marijuana happened in 2014. And according to MSNBC.com, in April, for that first quarter, crime rates had actually decreased in Denver and in Denver County, with property crimes down by about 11% and your violent crimes down by about 7%. Now, if you go to the Denver Police Department website, you can see that for the first 6 months of the year, those figures are slightly different, but with the murder, aggravated assault, sex offenses, and those that we consider to be really true detrimental crimes to our society, those have actually still dropped, with some of them dropping by more than 25%. With some benign, well, what I would consider, what most people would consider benign crimes being like you're disturbing the peace, some of your trespassing, and some of those other charges, those ones have actually gone up slightly. So what does this say? It's saying that there is still some crime, but it's not the ones that make us feel unsafe. Places where we don't want to move to and be able to raise our kids there. And the other thing that it shows us is that the drug marijuana is not leading to more crimes. It's actually the illegality of it that is leading to crimes. And so I do understand that we also don't want to create more drug addicts by introducing them to drugs. We want to make sure that marijuana is not a gateway for people to go on to harder drugs. We've all been told that it is. We all feel that, it is a gateway to it. So let's take a look at some other places such as Portugal and Netherlands that have either decriminalized all drugs or have pseudo-legalized the use of marijuana. Well, according to Forbes.com in 2011, after drugs had been decriminalized in Portugal for a decade, they have found out that the drug usage had actually decreased by almost half for lifelong drug users. What is that? That's the addicts. And as 2006, after it had been decriminalized for half a decade, Time magazine had reported that all drug usage had gone down in all age groups for every drug all across the board. Well, let's go ahead and look at a place that has actually pseudo-legalized marijuana, which is the Netherlands, because we all know about Amsterdam. And if we go to drugwarfacts.com, we can compare the Netherlands to the United States as far as marijuana usage and at least one other hard drug usage in there. And in 2009, in the United States, marijuana usage for somebody that used it at least once in their lifetime was at 41.5% of the population. And in the past year, it was at about 11%. And compared to the Netherlands, their lifelong use of it was at only 25%. In the past year, it was only at 7%. And okay, so Let's take a look at a harder drug, or take a look at heroin. In the past year usage for the United States, it is at 1.5%, and in the Netherlands, 0.5%. So what does this show us? Marijuana itself is not the gateway to harder drugs. What is the gateway to harder drugs is where you get your marijuana from. And so we take away, you go into a drug dealer, you go to a marijuana place to buy it, you're not going to buy those harder drugs. They are not trying to sell those to you. So in closing, I would like to propose that we legalize the medicinal and recreational use of marijuana to help fund our schools, reduce our crime rates, and also help out with the epidemic of drug addicts and also the increased drug usage in this country. It is about time that drug addiction is looked at as a health issue instead of as a criminal issue. As the great Albert Einstein once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, for the past 30 years, we have waged a war on drugs and doing it the same way and coming up with the same results every single time. That right there is a definition of insanity. And what we need to do is be able to change that and actually win this war with drugs by legalizing marijuana. Any questions?
Can you tell me a little bit about the difference between legalization and decriminalization?
Yes, decriminalization is the act of not treating it as a crime, and what they did in Portugal, instead of treating it as a crime, they treat it as a health issue. What they do is they look at what you did, how much you had, and whether or not you're a recreational user or if you are actually an addict. And if you're a recreational user, you are allowed to have up to 10 days worth of a supply on you, with it being a misdemeanor and a small fine. If you are found out to be if you are an addict, what they do is that then they prescribe treatment for you, which is going to doctors or methadone clinic or whatever those steps may be for you to become a non-addict anymore, or a recovering addict at that point in time, instead of just incarcerating you. But it is still technically illegal there, so there is those fines. But if you are a trafficker or if you are selling it, then there are harsher punishments for that. When legalization is, you're allowed to have it, and that's all there is to it. Okay. There is no fine.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
So for like the state of Colorado, did the voters choose to put that money towards education?
Yes, what they actually do is that there's a certain amount that's at the very beginning of it that they are going to put strictly towards the school districts and towards education, and also to drug education, to be able to educate the public about drugs. Because we're not saying it's safe, that it's good for you, that everybody should do it, but it is kind of that thing about everything in moderation. And if you are old enough to be able to use it and be able to use it correctly, then you are allowed to do it. But they are putting it towards those education services for the schools and also for drug education.
Is there an age limit on who can use it, like in Colorado versus Portugal?
Portugal is going to be, it's pretty much anybody that's not a minor, so over that 18 years of age, that they are allowed to be able to possess it. In Colorado, it is like alcohol, you have to be 21 years of age, and so you do have to be able to show that proof of ID whenever you go in to purchase it.
Thank you.
Thank you.